Welcome back to Redesigning Life. I took a little hiatus, but I had to come back because I have Case Kenny as a guest today. And if you don't follow him on Instagram, you should. And you probably do already because I was talking to a lot of friends of mine who are fans of his. And when I was saying I was so excited to have you on today, they're like, Case Kenny. And they looked on their Instagram. They're like, oh my God, I already follow him. And I think it's because you're not face forward. But I'm a huge fan of yours. Thank you for coming as a guest. I have so many questions for you.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, and thanks for making a return here. We need you. So,
No, this is going to be good because you speak about things that I am super passionate about. Case came out with a book called The Opposite of Settling. It came out last year. You could get it anywhere books are sold now. It was on bestseller list. So I've read through it and I have a bunch of questions, but I really believe in not settling. I just got married, Case, 3 months ago, 2 months ago,
all right.
at the age of 49.
Love it.
And my husband is amazing. And I spent most of my life settling. And I think now I'm so passionate about women and men
Yes.
living their best life and knowing their worth. And that's what you are passionate about too. So, first of all, can you tell people who may not be familiar with you sort of what you stand for, who you are, and like really what started this journey for you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I stand for pretty much one thing that has permeated my life that I'm passionate about, that I'm qualified to speak about, which is I want to help people be more optimistic in their lives in the way that they speak about things that elude them, in the way that they speak about what's happened to them. My background is in languages, randomly enough. I majored in Chinese and Arabic. I've studied Hindi, Latin, Urdu, all these languages. So I've always had a really keen appreciation for the way that language constructs our reality. The words that we use become predictions for what happens. And there's amazing, amazing research on a neuroscience level, on the psychology level around how that is a true statement, that words are spells. And so for the past 8 years on the podcast, on Instagram, and my books, you know, the only thing I'm really qualified to talk about is how can we speak about the things that we want, the things that elude us, and how can we do so in a way that speaks to our brain as well as our heart. And that's really what I'm so passionate about. I've been hosting this podcast for about 8 years. I've been writing on Instagram with my red pen for quite some time. I travel over the U.S. doing these keynotes called "The Language of Optimism." And then the book, of course, is the idea of the language of optimism, but specifically in your dating life. And yeah, I mean, it's completely changed my life, who I am as a person. I'm 37. It's helped me reinvent myself over and over again. Just the way that we have the most practical tool ever to change our life and rewire our brain. And it is shown. Like I always try to give the sales pitch that being an optimist really does change your life. I mean, it's been shown time and time again, decades and decades of research that optimists make more money, have longer lasting relationships, are healthier, are more creative, or more likable, all these things because it changes the way that you carry yourself in life. And it's all about word choice. It's all about language. It's all about sentence structure, the most practical thing. And yeah, I mean, I started this, to answer your question more specifically. I started all this in 2000, well, before that in like 2014, but more seriously in 2018 with the start of my podcast, really just as a challenge to know myself. I feel like before then, I didn't really know myself. I feel like I was unfair to myself, judgmental of myself, cynical of myself, of the world around me. So my creative endeavor initially with the podcast was to fix that, to have a worldview. And then very quickly, I realized what I was doing on the podcast with introspection, mindfulness, plus the science and heart of optimism, and I haven't looked back ever since, and it's
Okay,
a privilege to do it.
so let's talk about being optimistic because I also know some people who speak life is great. Oh my gosh, and are miserable behind the
Yeah.
scenes. So
Yeah,
it
yeah.
goes hand in hand that you have to speak it, but you actually have to feel it as well. Would you agree?
For sure. I mean, so the biggest thing is I hear that all the time, you know? The thing that I think people get confused, and this sounds crazy, but optimism doesn't necessarily necessitate positivity. Like those are two separate things. And oftentimes people think, oh, optimist is just being positive. Look on the bright side. It really is not. I mean, it depends on how you define things for sure. But when I define it within the construct of research and heart, it's optimism is the belief that things can change. That's the definition. So this leaves room for one, emotions to not be permanent, circumstances to change, the dating pool to change, the industry you're in to change, and but a core component of it. And I'm writing a book that's coming out in like a year and a half. That's
What's it called?
all, it's called The Language of Optimism.
Okay, great.
So technically hasn't even been announced yet. So the
It just
uh,
was.
the exactly the core component of that though is that to be an effective optimist before you get delusional about all the greatness that can come and your ability to visualize the future and your ability to put sentences behind how things can't change for the better, first and foremost is you have to embrace the negative. So there's so much great history and anecdotes and research behind we have to be specific about the negative that we feel. I present it as a wall on a swimming pool, that if you want to go far and fast in the pool, you have to kick off a wall, right? If you just start in the middle of the pool and you start swimming, it's going to be slow and slow and slow. Kicking off the wall is the negative. We have to be negative first. We have to embrace the negative first. We have to feel how we feel, and then we go to the positive. And that certainly is the difference between one, toxic positivity, toxic optimism, and then two, just saying positive things and not feeling it, saying positive things, but
Right,
still being miserable inside. So there's so many things from that. But to react to what you said, I hear that a lot. You know, your brain is not dumb, obviously.
right.
Your brain does not simply just believe what you tell it. You have to train it in a way to collect evidence and data points such that the brain believes it to be true. And once that's the case, then you're off to the races. But you can't ignore the negative. You have to embrace the negative. And there's a variety of constructs to help convince the brain to believe in optimism versus just receiving it.
First of all, I love that, and if you're watching this, you know that Case is holding a red pen. It's sort of his signature thing. Like, what started that whole red pen thing?
Well, it was two things. On the less deep side, I just wanted to stand out, right? Red to me has never been like a violent, aggressive color. I know some people are like, "Ooh, red, traumatic from high school with
Blood.
my teacher." It's never
Oh,
been my case necessarily. Oh yeah, or some, whatever it may be. You know, red is all kinds of symbolism. For me, it was just here's a color that stands out, that pops. When I think of clarity, I think of red. I think of a sea of distraction, and then red draws my eye. So that's always been why I've done it. And now to me, you know, and red represents power. Red represents these things. It represents stop. It means all these things. So for me, I've just continued to do it in red,
well,
and
it's
it's
your
worked
signature
well.
thing, and I see people doing it now,
And
and
now
I
it's my thing. Yeah, sure.
yeah, I know it's always your post, but, like, so knowing a little bit more about you, and I have a question for a lot of my single friends. What is your romantic situation?
I'm engaged and getting married in June, so very soon.
Yay!
Yeah,
Congratulations.
thank you.
I don't have any wedding advice because I had a micro wedding. It was tiny, but,
We're
that is
we're we're doing the same thing. Literally just immediate
yeah.
family. So it's going to
Oh,
be
that's
lean
exactly
and
what
mean.
we did. It
Yeah.
was I highly recommend it. First of all, congratulations. Okay, then knowing that you're engaged, what would you say to someone that feels let's talk about settling, that they are so lonely, and I think a lot of my single friends are just sick of being alone, so they're like, "Well, how do I not how do you know when you're settling versus just being realistic?"
Yeah. Well, how much time do you have? So there's a lot there, right? I think the simplest answer to that would be to go back as far as you can in twofold. One, to realize the purpose of a relationship, and two, to put a mindset behind you to live your life such that the absence of another person is something you want, but not having it doesn't negate the joy and happiness that you currently have. And that's the tricky spot. So I'll say to do the latter first. Chapter one of the book is called Out of Town Confidence, which I don't know if you've ever heard that term, but you've probably lived it in your life. When you're in another city and you're traveling, let's say you're in Miami or wherever, New York, LA, something, you're traveling. I don't know if you've ever noticed, but when you're in one of those new cities, you kind of have a little bit more confidence. You got a little bit more pep in your step. You're in a new city, not everyone knows you there. You've got that vacation energy that you know, I'm traveling, I'm here to just experience the thing. If you're in Miami and you're here for like 4 or 5 days, you're here to see the beaches, the people, the music, the fun. You're here for an experience, right? You're here for the totality of what you're there for. You're not there to find one person to make the experience enjoyable. You're there to enjoy the experience, and if you meet someone, then that amplifies it. And that's the mentality that I talk a lot about in the book. It's expanding your definition of a full life and love, and having that out of town confidence such that you're living your life and your goal is to live fully across all definitions of love, but you're open to someone coming along and keyword amplifying your joy that you've already created for yourself versus the opposite, which would be looking for a person such that you could then find all the joy in life. And, love and a person, of course, is an enormously powerful, one of the main purposes of life. But to put the burden on a relationship to give you the joy and satisfaction of being alive is the reverse order. So I talk a lot about having that out of town confidence such that when you don't have a partner, sure, it's normal to feel lonely, but you're still centered in on the purpose of life, which is to live your life fully and find joy and find all these things such that when you are potentially dating someone, you can answer the question, which is, does this person amplify my life? Does this person make me feel like more of myself? So we have to throw ourselves into life as deep as we can. And I know sometimes that comes off as patronizing, but the idea is to give you a better view of self such that you know if they amplify that sense of self. And I find a lot of times people just skip that because they're so focused on having a partner, being in a relationship, not being lonely, that they don't have that grounding. I talk in the book about it's called your essence. There's a book called The Soul's Code by James Hillman, which talks about inside all of us we have an essence. That is something inside of us that makes us us, that is unique in some capacity, a mixture of things. And he calls it an acorn. And you could plant an acorn in the ground, and you could really hope that it becomes a banana tree. But it's an acorn. It has to become an oak tree. And we can spend a lot of our lives ignoring the thing that's inside of it that's true to us in favor of, being nonchalant or low maintenance or this or that. But inevitably, it has to exist in that form. And I think, I present that idea as knowing yourself such that you know if someone amplifies yourself. So I think in a roundabout way, that is the answer of coming back to that. And when that's the case, loneliness is normal, of course, when you have so much love to give and you want to be with a partner, but you've expanded your definition of love and you're focused on self, and it just makes the process easier.
So do you feel like that happened in your own life? I mean, you're in your mid to late 30s, so
Yeah.
something had to have shifted for you and your soon to be wife where you both met at the right time. Would you say that is
Yeah,
true?
I mean, and that's all of that to be said, that timing certainly is the most important and direct variable in all that. I think, yeah, I met Emily at the perfect moment in my life where I finally was like, this is who I am. This is what I represent. This is what I want. And, you could add that to a lot of things, right place, right time, serendipity. We were both in Chicago at the time. But I think before that, yeah, I mean, I truly did not understand the purpose of a relationship. I was pretty typical male avoidant, perhaps, in the sense of thinking that a relationship was this existential threat to my independence. And what I realized with Emily is that I've never felt more independent than being in a relationship with her. Our relationship has made me more independent. So I have an entire chapter on that about with the right person, you feel more independent because
It's
you have that
true.
connection. And that, like, if anything, that was the catalyst for me being like, whoa, oh, this is different. Like, this is the one. Because in the past, it was, well, the assumption was that a partner would limit my independence, which is a important male attribute as well as an important human attribute, and that totally changed. And now we're just a beautiful combination of creative energy. She's a DJ and producer. I do whatever the heck it is I do, write and talk, and I've never felt more independent, more playful. I think also, like, in my late 20s and early 30s, dating had become this like serious endeavor, which it is a serious endeavor, but it carried that serious weight to it. And I think the purpose of a relationship is to return you to a state of playfulness,
It's funny
whimsy,
when I
weirdness.
my husband's name's Nate, he's from Chicago,
Ah,
and he and I talk about our first date because it was the first time in my life that I didn't make dating serious. I was like, you know what? I already have my daughter. I don't care about really getting married again. I don't care about having kids, so I'm just gonna have fun for the first time in my life."
man.
And he says when we went on our first date, he couldn't believe we started talking about dating, and he's like, "Isn't it the worst?" And I'm like, "No, I'm actually having the best time."
Yeah.
And he was shocked that I said that, but I wasn't saying that to be cool. Like, I actually felt so relaxed. And I think that's what changed. I just wasn't trying to choke it to death so much. And I think that that's what people do, women and men. But I assume most of your, oh, I guess I should ask you, Do most people who, like, DM you, are they women asking for advice? Yeah. So what do you think most women ask you about sort of high standards meets, like, the difference between high standards and fear-based perfectionism, let's say?
Yeah, it's a lot within that realm, right? Am I asking for too much type thing? A lot of women, but some men, but like beating themselves up for presenting themselves, coming on too strong. Yeah, it's everyone is just trying to figure out how much they should care. That seems to be the thing. Like, should I be bothered by this? Should I care about this? Should I be worried about myself? Am I doing something wrong? Everyone's just trying to make sense of their life. I think ultimately most people are trying to figure out if they're asking for too much, um, which is tough. And usually my advice is I really try to stay away from like tactical advice. Like, what do I know about how to find a person? I got lucky. Um, but I do know when it comes to like how do we all too often talk ourselves out of what we want. Well, usually it's because we negate the value of lived experience. Like, I talk to people all the time, and people are very quick to be able to talk about what they want in a partner. And oftentimes I'll ask about like, where are those standards coming from? And whenever someone has a standard and they're able to say, well, it's because I dated this person and here's what I learned from it, I say, yes, yes, that is it. That is a standard. Never negotiate that. But when I hear them say, well, this, I just feel like, and I want this, I question standards like that. Not that you shouldn't have theoretical standards, but the most powerful thing you have is lived experience from which you have standards and boundaries. When that's the case, you should never second guess yourself. You don't need to ask me if you're asking for too much. Ask yourself, do I have an experience that taught me this? Yes. That is a true personal lived wisdom. Never, don't negotiate that. Anything else? Yeah, I think we apply a measure of awareness to it, but for the most part, I think people really do discount where these things are coming from, and that like that's your source of power. And I really try to encourage people to go back to where they lived it and where they loved it and where it came from, and that tends to ground people in their power.
Shifting gears a little bit, still into settling, but you said something in your podcast about not just settling in relationships, but in life, like not charging enough for your services, things like that, that you said that you've known and you are a speaker. So if somebody is dealing with this in a business professional setting, that maybe they want to raise their prices or they want to ask for a raise, you said that you've learned this yourself. So can you talk a little bit about how you got yourself out of settling?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's if I can go back and change things, I think I would have been more audacious in terms of like business. Like, specifically, I'm talking about like speaking. So I do a fair amount of paid keynote speaking, which is a great business. Like, there's a lot of money to be made, but it's very, very difficult and very competitive, right? There's like a top percent of people, and then there's everyone else. And my ambition is to be in the top percent. And usually it comes from, you know, being fear based. I set my rate and I'm just worried that I'm going to lose someone. I'm just going to lose their interest immediately based upon the rate that I set. And I used to really discount myself, and I would do things for pennies on the dollar, and I would travel and do these things. And I think recently, really just like the past 2 years of being resolute, for one, in knowing what I have to offer and setting the rate, and not having that scarcity mindset. Like, I'm writing this book right now, where I'm talking a lot about competing beliefs. That is not a limiting belief, right? So we have limiting beliefs. Limiting beliefs are, I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough to charge this much money. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about two competing beliefs that we have. I have a desire to be a top speaker, for instance, but I also have this belief that being a top speaker requires me to suffer for that. And I really struggle with that because I'm very type A. I work really hard. I think I'm good at what I do, but I've always had this desperation to me sometimes that like things don't come easy. Like, in order to be successful, I've got to suffer. It's going to hurt. It's going to suck. It's going to take all this time. And there's an element that's true, but I've really found those two things to be competing with each other. And it manifests in so many different ways. It manifests when like someone reaches out to me and says, "Hey, Case, we'd love to have you speak. Please give me some of these details." I have this desire for that to be true, but I also have this belief that, oh, they're gonna dip as soon as I name my fee, and they're not gonna
Yeah.
want me, and they're gonna choose someone else. They probably emailed a bunch of other people. I need to sit here. I need the perfect email. I need to follow up 10 times. And I have a manager, and like sometimes I'm always texting him, hey, 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 just desperate. I even remember in my sales career, I led a sales team for a long time, and I even remember one specific instance. I was in this conference room with a client, and we were pitching him, me and my boss at the time, and I was leading the meeting, and I was pitching him, and near the end of the meeting, the guy was like, "All right, awesome, like we're gonna do it, like we're gonna give you the business." And I just, like, kept going. I just, like, kept pitching. I didn't believe it to be true, and afterwards, my boss was like, "Dude, like, why we got the business. Why'd you keep selling? You don't need to. Like, it happened. You're good." And I've just always had this struggle with believing that something can come easily, that money can flow easily. So, for me, I've really had to reconcile those 2 things, and to say that good things can happen. I work hard, and I name my rate, and if it doesn't work, that's fine. I don't have to strangle the opportunity. I can let go in a sense. And frankly, that's something I'm still working on, but that has helped me step outside of that discounting my rates or my belief or my worth or whatever it may be, is unearthing the desire and then the belief that might be in competition with it, and reconciling them.
It's so true. I deal with the same thing and I'm still dealing with it. So I empathize so much with everything you're saying because my parents are from Cuba and I was raised in a we've got to work hard and hustle, and I am type A, so I work hard constantly,
Yeah.
but I'm just like you. Sometimes I feel like I got to write the email, let me follow up. Don't forget to follow up a week from now. And then when I sort of get sick of being like that and I let go, things flow so much easier. But
I
it's
know.
so hard to believe in that when you're feeling that you really want an opportunity. But usually when you do let go, things do flow. You just have to believe it.
That's where I'm at right now. I'm starting to see that. I mean, certainly you have to put in the foundation, you have to plant the seed, you have to water the seed, but the blooming can be beautiful if you allow it to be. And yeah, I think people don't often realize that they have those competing beliefs about them. I was with I don't know if you know David Guillaume. He teaches a lot about Kabbalah,
Yeah.
and I was with him the other day, and he was telling me an example about someone that he was coaching who they wanted to be a high power CEO, big CEO, Fortune 200 company. And then the more that he was talking to him, he also unearthed that this guy had a belief that power was corruption, and that like power was evil. And he didn't put the two and two together, that he wanted to be this person who inevitably would have power, but at the same time, he believed that power was bad. And you could see how those two things like kind of directly contradict each other, goal and belief, whether it's goal and goal. And I think there's really something there in terms of, we have these desires planted within us. And I believe, as maybe you do, that, we don't necessarily have desires that we're not capable of achieving. Usually the issue is that alignment within ourselves. So that's why it's so important to do all these practices, from, mindful practices to some of the writing exercises that I encourage people to do, to be able to vocalize these things that we don't realize are in competition with each other. And I find that to be a beautiful endeavor of clarifying the way that as humans we're complicated and we're hypocritical, and we say one thing and we mean another, and it's really crazy stuff, and it's really fascinating. And you can't just tell yourself one thing, you have to believe it at a deep
Yeah.
level. And yeah, it helps.
Well, okay, that comes to my next question I wanted to ask you, like, obviously there's not a one size fits all, and I know you're really into writing, but what are your go-to mindfulness? Like, what does a day look like for Case?
What does a day look like for me? Well, I mean, every day I'm writing, certainly. My writing process is pretty simple. I usually always like to write in response to a prompt. So I'm never like a stream of consciousness writer. Usually I have hundreds of pages of docs of things that other people have written. Someone will say, this is love, or clarity is this, or a good standard is this. And I'll say, oh, that was interesting. What do I think? And then I'll write off of that. So a lot of it is every single day just writing in response to that. My zone of genius writing is between like 10 and 1, coffee 1 and coffee 2. I listen to like a lot of house music. It's not like I like 140 BPM, like very uplifting, energetic music. That's what gets me going and feeling vulnerable. So it's a lot of writing from that perspective. Now, currently, I'm in the process of writing this book, so it's a lot of research. Even though, like, this past week was somewhat interesting. I went to one of my friends owns a business here called Supermind, where basically they measure brainwave activity. And we went in, and I took myself through a bunch of these linguistic practices I do. So, like the difference between talking to yourself about if something happens versus when something happens, the difference between saying, I want to do something, but, and I want to do something, and. And we basically measured my brain activity when I did both of those. I did 5 minutes of one, 5 minutes of another, and we measured the brain activity, right? So the alpha, the delta waves, the theta waves, these are waves associated with fight or flight or happiness or threat detection. And we measured those in response to the language I used. And it was the coolest, most clarifying thing ever about it literally rewires your brain based upon the language you use. So I'm doing a lot more research in that sense that has been really, really cool. That I think for me, a former self-development skeptic in my 20s, this kind of thing is really like textured and
Because
you
it's
know it's
science-based.
real. It's
Yeah.
science-based, but you feel it in your heart. That's why I think that's the sweet spot for people, I really think, is the science-backed and heart-led, as I call it. To me, I think that's what some people need. They need the specifics, but they need the belief, and you meet in the middle.
Okay, before you go, I have some fast, rapid questions. Ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Settling or being realistic, how do you know the difference in one sentence?
Yeah, I would go back to what I said before. I said, "You're never settling if it's coming from past experience."
Okay.
Period.
If someone says, I just need more time, what does that really mean?
It means they're not worth your time.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
Is chemistry overrated? Yes or no?
Absolutely overrated.
Wait, why?
Like, could I say more in one sentence now?
No, yeah, the only one that was one sentence was the first one. So yes.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, I mean, first of all, you and I are nice people, right? We
Yeah.
speak well, we present ourselves now. We could have chemistry with a lot of different people, right?
True.
We want to find chemistry. I think there's a big difference between chemistry and compatibility, long term, short term. I think at least as my definition by of chemistry is that's butterflies and rainbows, immediate human emotions, and I think it's a great sign to see if you have compatibility. But I think it's somewhat overrated. When you bring a lot to the table, you're a kind person. You want to see the best in others. You look good. You're funny. I think sometimes we can get lost in that just a little bit.
Yeah. Okay.
What do you
What
think?
I agree. I mean, I think some of the worst relationships I've been in, we had amazing chemistry in the
All right.
beginning. It turned
Fair
out to be a
enough.
complete nightmare. I think
Yeah.
for me, at least with my husband, it was slow and steady in the beginning.
Yeah. Same with my fiance and I. I'll tell you how I knew. I'll just share the anecdote because I think it's funny. We went on like 3 dates and it was good. It wasn't like crazy. It wasn't fireworks and oh my gosh, this is the one. But what really sealed it for me is I'm 37, but I'm like a child sometimes when it comes to like what I eat. Very basic palate. I don't need a lot. I'm not fancy. I don't know what I'm doing in
Same with
Miami where
me.
there's so much great food. So, but I love mashed potatoes. And my girlfriend came over for date 4 and she had gone to 8 different restaurants and picked up mashed potatoes from 8 different restaurants. And I had a mashed potatoes of Chicago tour. And I don't know, I just like
I
that was
love
I was
that.
like, "Oh, like we have chemistry and we have compatibility now because of the mashed potatoes." But, it's a joke somewhat, but
I
like
love
things
that.
things like that.
I know. Well, so when I started dating Nate, I went to, do you know the Hoffman Institute?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I went to the Hoffman Institute and
Oh,
we had
cool.
just started dating and then I was out of pocket for 7 days. And the whole time I was
Yeah.
there, I kept thinking about him, hoping that he was thinking about me, but he lived in Chicago, I lived in LA. And when I turned on my phone, he had left me vlogs while I was
Wow.
in Hoffman, like, "Hey, today's day 3 and today's day 5," and, I just realized then, like, what a incredibly sweet human being to, like, have done that, but it's about those little things that you just
Yeah.
know. Okay.
Yeah. That's
Um,
beautiful.
what's the fastest way to raise your standards without becoming impossible?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I mean, it's through the lens of reciprocity. What do you so eagerly and willingly give? Effort, energy, consistency? I think you look for the mirror of that, and that's where your standard should be.
Okay. One sentence every woman should repeat before she texts back.
I would say before she texts back. Well, I mean, I would go higher level. I would just say the mantra that I always write. That was one of my more popular ones. I wrote, um, "You are worthy. You are worth every cent of what you're asking for." again, grounded in what we just said, but just reminding yourself of that before you engage, before you start to compromise, before you start to text and lose yourself. Just remind yourself that you are worth what you're asking for, specifically because that's what you give. And when it's grounded in that, it just becomes a measure of reciprocity in the right way, right? It's not always 50-50, but I think that that's helpful context.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited. Your new book is going to be out 2027. The Opposite of Settling is already out, came out August of 2025, so you can get it now. I appreciate your time so much. And obviously, if you're driving and listening to this, I'll have all of Case's information. But I highly recommend to follow because every day there's like nuggets of just knowledge and it's inspiration. I love it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.